Okay, continuing on with our zoo mastigophorans. Next up is our trypanosomes, and you had these on your disease sheet. So the two species that we're going to talk about today of Trypanosoma, the first Trypanosoma brucei and Trypanosoma gambians. Sleeping sickness, as your sheet said, is transmitted through the vector known as the tsetse fly. The tsetse fly is a very large fly. You can see it over there on the right. It lives in Africa, and when it bites you, it transmits the trypanosome into your bloodstream. The characteristics are very, you can have high fevers, you can be very lethargic, mental deterioration, and coma are very common. It's traveling by means of flagella. Don't forget that. That's what we're talking about right now, our zoomastigophorans. Okay, now sometimes, guys, they refer to them as mastigophorans. They don't always say zoomastigophorans, so don't let that throw you. But we have another one that is a parasite, Trichomonas vaginalis, and it's responsible for trichomoniasis, which is an STD. We talked about it. That's what it looks like over here on the right. The parasite really cannot survive outside the body, so it's very rare to pick this up anywhere else except for being sexually transmitted. It's not going to live on a toilet seat or in unclean clothing for any amount of time. Trichomoniasis is one of our most common STDs that is, it's not the most common bacterial, but it is the most common of your Protista STDs. So it also, you can see, is moving by means of a flagella. When infected, a lot of people don't know that they have been infected because one of the most common is genital itching. Now, for male, that would probably be more prominent. In females, it really doesn't start to itch until the discharge is present. So if there's irritation up near the cervix, which would be the opening of the uterus, you don't really feel itching there so much. But as the discharge starts to present, it's discolored, it's not clear, it's usually milky, sometimes has a yellowish tint to it. There can be a little blood in it. It is odoriferous, meaning it's smelly. And very often with that comes the urge to urinate. Now, there are other reasons that urge could be there, such as a bladder infection, but this urge would present itself with a very discolored discharge along with the genital itching. And this can happen in men and women. So if a female has got a trichomonas infection, then it can be transmitted to a partner, and of course, both have to be treated. Okay, now this slide just kind of winds up. So there's going to be one of these slides after every phylum, and this just winds up the phylum Zoomastigophora. So these are some of the key points. So the phylum is Zoomastigophora. The common name are zooflagellates. Their body plan. Now this is like, what does their overall body plan look like? They're going to be single-celled, and they're going to have one or more flagella. They're not going to have more than 10, but remember, flagella are not nearly as numerous as cilia. Motility, that means how do they move? They move by means of flagella. Their nutrition type, they're heterotrophs. That's why they have one of those in common with animals, and that's why they call them animal-like, because they're not capable of making their own food. And of course, a lot of them are parasitic. One of the genuses, and this is just one, you could give me any of the ones we talked about above, would be Giardia lamblia. All right, moving into this phylum is Sarcodina. This is our amoebas and also the forams. So there's a group called foraminifera, and they can easily change shape as well. So sarcodines are the amoebas, and the forams belong to a group called foraminifera. Your amoebas are very flexible, and they have what is called a false foot. That means it's a fake foot. Pseudo means false, and they move by means of a false foot. So if you look over on the right, they don't really have a specific shape. They have these extensions, these temporary extensions of their cell membrane that allow the cytoplasm to stream into them. And this overall is called a false foot. And this is how they move, but this is also how they feed. As they're moving this way, they can actually surround food particles and take them into the body of the amoeba. So the pseudopod has got two functions for movement and for feeding. It has a very unique shape to it, and the shape is always changing. So when it comes to a body plan, it's sort of an amoeboid plan, and that cytoplasmic streaming or the streaming of the cytoplasm into the foot is what's actually allowing the amoeboid type of movement for this particular protist. And here is a picture. I hope that you can see it streaming. I can see it on mine, but when you see these extensions reaching out, it gives it, a very bizarre shape. And as it extends out, of course, all of the organelles and the nuclei and everything can stream with it, but it forms all of these extensions. They're called pseudopods, fake feet, and they're not only allowing for movement, but they're allowing for feeding. Amoeboid movement is a very slow type of movement. Flagella is slow too. Of all the types of movement we'll talk about, cilia actually probably is the quickest. These two types are very slow. And as you can see, as it oozes along, it's able to not only move, but it's able to engulf either smaller protists or bacteria, and that's the way it feeds. All right, now its type of feeding. It feeds by surrounding the food and trapping it with its pseudopod, and it puts it inside a vesicle called a food vesicle. And what they do is they release enzymes and they allow the digestion to happen inside of the vesicle. So they're not releasing enzymes into their environment and absorbing it back like some that we will talk about. What they do is they have some enzymes inside of the food vacuole itself, and that's where the digestion of the food begins. I don't think, well, it looks like it's playing. Here's just another video of an amoeba in real time, and you can see that it's forming all kinds of pseudopods. All right, now most amoebas are free living, which means they're not parasitic, but some of them are. Some live in the human intestine and can cause disease. You've had this one on your sheet, Entamoeba histolytica. It enters the body through contaminated food and water, and sometimes it can cause ulcers. Ulcers are little areas of irritation, a lot like a fever blister in your mouth, and they can happen in your stomach from this particular protist. And if untreated, the disease is called amoebiasis, but if untreated, it can be fatal. Now, what the amoeba do is they can encyst themselves, form a cyst, and if the conditions are harsh, they stay in that cyst until the environmental conditions are favorable again. Sometimes these amoeba can stay in your body forever, and I think I've told you before, I have students that still have them because they ate unclean bag salads, and that's a very common source for an amoeba, and have not been able to get rid of them. We've talked about how hard it is to get rid of something living when it is inside of something living.